All right, we should be live. If you are in the chat, let me know. I'll give some time for people to roll in here. Jonathan Cook says, just got back, shot 510 from March. Nice. What's that like? 5 shots dropped? That's really good. That's very impressive. Mark says, welcome from Tulsa. Everything coming across loud and clear. Awesome. Glad to hear it. Give people a minute or two to roll in. We will be drawing for the MDT bipod today, and I'll be answering a bunch of your questions. Got some notes here. We had about 57 unique people enter the contest, so you guys have pretty good odds, a little less than 2% odds if you followed the directions and submitted a question. Some people had multiple questions, so we have a lot to go over. We'll try and keep it relatively streamlined here. And if you have any questions during the stream, feel free to throw them in the chat. I can answer those live as well. A lot of good questions came through. A lot of people asked some really great questions. So let's see. We can probably get started here. So I set up this little data here. I'm a data scientist by trade, so just giving you a little breakdown of kind of the topics of questions that people were asking. I kind of gave them arbitrary groups. So a lot of people asking questions about the rifle, a lot of people asking about mass strategy, general advice, ammo bags, a couple of things about other gear, scopes, and sort of the mental aspects. So lots of great questions. If I don't get to your question, let me know down in the comments after this video gets published, and I'll do my best to answer it. If I don't fully answer your question, it's probably because I'm going to make a video about it soon. So this was a great way for me to get feedback from the community about what you guys want to learn about, so I can help make videos to help you guys score more points, because that's the whole point of this channel. Mainly NRL focused for now. I'm definitely going to bring you some PRS content coming up soon. I've just been headstrong into the NRL 22 game. I did win the March Course of Fire, which puts me at 6 wins for the season, so perfect 600 points. Basically solidifies my position in Nationals, or at least for an invitation to Nationals, and therefore hope to be going to Nationals and bring you content from that, which should be really exciting. Should be a good match. So we can just jump into some questions here. Like I said, come in and throw things in the comments if you have questions or want me to expand on anything. Looks like we got something coming through here. Herman says, any advice on match ammo in California? All the box stores out of Center X, SK, etc. can't get ammo shipped to the door. Ooh, that's interesting. I didn't know you couldn't get it shipped there. That sucks. I was going to say Lapua Testing Center and then have them ship you a case, but if you can't get ammo shipped, then I'm not quite sure what to do. What you might be able to do is, if you do go like the Lapua Testing Center route, which if you guys don't know, there's one local to me here in Mesa, and I think there's one in Ohio. Ely also has a testing center out of, I want to say Texas. I'm not 100% sure on that. But they only sell you 10X, which is the expensive stuff. So I would say do the lot testing and see if they can ship it to an FFL or a distributor, and then buy it from them, have them like hold it for you. That'd be my best guess. But you have to send in your rifle, take some time. There's probably like a 6 to 8 month lead time. So yeah, California, probably out of luck for now until things come back in stock. I know Lapo has been really behind. I shouldn't say behind. I should say things sell out quickly when there is availability. Best of luck. Sorry, I can't help. All right, so we can jump to some questions. I compiled all the questions. If there's like spelling mistakes and all that kind of stuff, it's because I just copied it from you guys' emails. But we can jump into this. So we'll start with one of the bigger categories. Questions about rifles. Everyone wants to know about what's the best rifle, this, that, the other thing. So Let's talk about some of these. So we've got, do you know the top 10 22 long rifle barrel and chassis builds for NRL and international competitors? That's a good question. I don't know specifically, but what you see usually winning at the top is going to be your Voodoos, your Rimex, and your CZs. Some of the higher end Bragaras probably make it up there, but really, I mean, it's what you practice with. And we're going to sort of talk about in this live stream a little bit about how much accuracy do you actually need to be good at the sport, and how much is it actually going to come down to you, the shooter? And the answer is you don't need to be probably like one whole group accurate as long as you can get stable, find targets quickly, and make good win calls. And the mental game is probably the biggest aspect of the sport. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, what you see at the top is usually Voodoo. Voodoo's made a really good name for themselves. There are issues with Voodoos. There's people have magazine fitting issues and all that kind of stuff. So there's pros and cons, but they generally build an extremely accurate rifle platform. Voodoo, Rimex, CZs with upgraded barrels, that kind of stuff. If you're interested in going down that custom route, definitely look for a gunsmith that knows what they're doing, has a proven track record of building rifles that win, or at least group very accurately. But you don't have to have the top gear to compete. I don't advocate for spending money unnecessarily, but everyone likes shiny new things, so can't blame you for wanting to go for something big. All right, question number 2, what are thoughts on barrel twist rates? Again, this is something I don't have very much expertise in, so I think the verdict is still kind of out. What's really interesting about 22 is with the added popularity, we are seeing a lot of people trying to experiment. It's 22 long rifle from a precision rifle standpoint is pretty new and young to the game. 22s were generally considered, varmint hunting, plinking, not a serious round, but all this competition has really bred some really interesting innovation in the field. 1 in 16 twist is probably the industry standard that most people are shooting. People have experimented with faster twist barrels. I have heard anecdotally that faster twist barrels are more ammo picky when it comes to lot testing. I know people have been dabbling in like 1 in 14 and 1 in 13 twist. It's probably as fast as you would go. There are some crazy like 1 in 9 twists, which I don't think really makes a whole lot of sense. You're overspinning the bullet. The faster your barrel twist rate, the more sort of wind deflection you're going to have when it comes to spin drift and that kind of stuff. So there is a con to it. What I would like to see though is someone with a faster twist barrel, maybe try some of that new. Norma came out with their new TAC 22 Extreme, which is actually a 43 grain projectile versus the standard 40 grain projectile. So a slightly heavier projectile should give you better ballistic performance, ballistic coefficient, and maybe a faster twist barrel will help stabilize that even more. So I'd be really interested in something like a 1 in 13 twist with Norma TAC 22, and that would be basically for better performance long range. Anything inside of 100 yards, I think 1 in 16 is, like I said, the industry standard, and all my barrels are 1 in 16 on all my rifles, and I've had no problem going out to 200-300 yards with good ammo and good data. All right, question 3. Zeroing it 50, 125, 50. The answer is always 50. There can be an argument made for 35 yards, because if you zero at 35 yards, everything past 35 is up in elevation. Sometimes we have that KYL rack on NRL 22 matches that are at 35 yards, and if you're 0 to 50, you actually have to dial down. And if your scope has a 0 stop or you don't have the ability to dial down, it can be a little challenging. But for rimfire, I think 95% of competitors are zeroing at 50 yards. Centerfire, why we do 100 is the typical 0. And as for 25, generally speaking, with the speeds that we're going for 22 long rifle, your 50 and 25 yard 0 should be almost identical. So, question number 4, which products do you recommend when adding an Arca Switzel rail to a wooden or composite stock? That's a good question. You're going to probably have to drill into the stock, which I think makes a lot of people uneasy. But if you have a drill press, it makes it much easier. Let's see if we go back to full screen here. I do have, now the stream might go down because YouTube doesn't like any of this stuff, but this is just a piece of wood. But this is my CZ MTR, and you can see it has drilled, and these are T-nuts. So what these are, they're the T-nuts with the prongs. So it uses the original swing swivel stud locations, just drilled all the way through. And then on the back, you get something called, I think it's called a Forstner bit, which hogs out the hole. And then you pop these in there and then tap them in with a punch, like a nylon punch or something, so they dig into the wood. You want something definitely secure. So I have 3 in here, and those would attach to the Arca rail. So I think that's probably the best way to go. Maybe put some epoxy in there just to really make sure they're bedded, because you don't want your Arca rail to shift at all. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. So you're probably going to have to drill into the stock. I wouldn't use simple just wood screws. I would definitely make it brace with one of those those pronged T-nuts. Threaded inserts might work, but depending on how much stress you put on the Arca rail with your attachments, you don't want it ripping out of the stock, because you're going to cause more problems than not. So hopefully that helps. Like I said, a drill press is key. Make sure you measure 50 times before cutting once. Question number 5. What old school vintage 22 long rifle and scope would you choose to compete with in NRL 22 if there was a class for it? That's a good question. So what's really interesting in our sport, for NRL 22, you really want something that has detachable magazines, right? So it has to be a repeater. Ideally, something that could have a 10-round magazine. And for the scope, you definitely want something that has dialable turrets. And having dialable turrets, quote unquote tactical turrets, is relatively new to the game. And I think in this person's specific email, they were talking about pre-1990. So I'd probably go with that one. My first choice would probably be like a Weatherby Mark 22, because it has those detachable magazines. And scope-wise, the very, very early Leupolds, which were before the Mark IV came out. So the precursor to the Mark IV, there was like the Leupold Ultra, or the M24, or even the first Mark IV, I think came out in 1988. It was called the Mark IV LRT, which I think was long range tactical or something like that. It was a 10 power scope, had a mil-dot reticle, but it did have dialable turrets, and I think that would be necessary for this sport. Interesting question for a vintage class. I know other competitions like bench rest and stuff, they do have a vintage class, so it's a pre 19 something rifle, 1970 rifle, usually iron sights, so pretty interesting. I don't think we're going to see that come to NRL 22, but an interesting thought and good question. More rifle questions. Do you think that air rifles are going to take over the 22 rimfire rifles in 22 competition? No, I don't necessarily think air rifles are really going to take over. They're dedicated air rifle like bench rest competitions, and yeah, if we look at like the scores online, there are very few air rifle competitors. I think there's that new FX gun that looks just like a regular full size rifle because the air is in the tube or something like that around the barrel. That's interesting, but I think air guns are gaining popularity. But as long as it remains a sort of 22 centric sport, I think 22 is gonna to dominate. But we always welcome air rifle people to compete, and it's kind of cool because you can get that dialed in, and as long as your air rifle is set up right and all your plenums and all the pressure and all the regulators are set, you don't have to worry about lot testing. You can just buy a certain pellet that your rifle likes and then tune the air to it. So if you want to avoid lot testing, air rifle might be the way to go. You just buy high quality match pellets and then you do all the tuning yourself. You don't have to actually experiment with buying different lots of ammunition. Got some questions coming in on the chat here. Do you have a barrel cleaning routine? I think that will come up in one of the questions later, so hang around a little bit for that. It's pretty simple, though. I'll explain it in a bit. And about the Arca rail, what if a non-MTR CZ457 stock with 4N that is not parallel to the barrel? Is it okay if the Arca rail is not parallel to the barrel? Yeah, so same story. There's a little bit less meat on some of the varmint hunter style traditional stocks. So you have to be a little bit more careful that you don't drill huge holes into your rifle. Your Arca rail doesn't have to be parallel. It's just a method by which you attach different things. So the advantage of having the Arca rail sort of the full length of the forend is definitely going to be, so you can slide your bipod up, so you can do like the 55-gallon drum or tires or something like that. You can shorten the distance between the buttstock and the forend of the rifle. That's really the big advantage. And then if you want to use things like um, sort of the gamer plates, either the Gray Ops plate, the Area 419 plate, the Coltac backbone, anything that attaches to Arca rail, you want that to be sort of over the balance point of the rifle right in front of the mag well anyway. So that gives you more mounting options. You don't need an Arca rail, but what's great about an Arca rail is if you don't have some of this gear like plates and all that kind of stuff, most other serious competitors at one point have acquired that gear and they usually bring it to matches. So with an Arca rail, you can borrow all of their stuff. Whereas if you're using a bipod, like a Harris bipod that attaches to like a swing swivel stud, you're pretty much limited to that configuration. You can't really adapt and borrow other people's gear. So I advocate for Arca rails. They don't have to be parallel. You just have to know the limitations of what that means. If it's not parallel, then if your bipod is all the way out versus if it's closer to the mag well, it's going to give you a different angle of attack, right? Different pitch. So you might need to just compensate with that with a different rear bag, like a larger or smaller rear bag, and plan accordingly. But shouldn't be a problem. There's just a little less meat on some of those smaller varmint type, like I said, hunting, like CZs, for example. Okay, let's see what else here. We got question number 7. Do you prefer the PDC or the MDT chassis for the CZ457? So the PDC custom chassis that I have, I'm trying something new, actually. So March I competed with the PDC, and today is my birthday, actually. So got myself a birthday present of a new chassis/stock, which you'll see in future videos. I'll keep it a little bit of a secret. So I'm trying something new. I do like the PDC. I think it's very well machined. I think the tolerances are pretty tight. The MDT is on another level, and the price reflects that, right? So I think it's $12.99 for the MDT chassis, and you can get into a PDC custom chassis for about half that, depending on the options and the weight kit and all that stuff. I mean, you're gonna have to buy weights for the MDT chassis anyway, so it's about twice as expensive for the MDT chassis. So is it twice as good? Maybe not, but I think it is kind of like one of the industry standards. And if you have a centerfire rifle or something like that you want to set up that already has an MDT chassis, I think having your rimfire rifle as a trainer for your centerfire rifle, if you do both sports, is extremely beneficial. Question 8: could you recommend a rifle to start with around 1K? So there's another question here that we'll get to a little later about I don't want to necessarily go super cheap base class rifle, which are usually around like $500 or $600. I don't want to go super custom like $2,000-$3,000. So what's like in the middle, right? So I think around the $1,000 mark, you're looking at higher end CZs. And if you stretch to about $1,200, the Bergara B14R, which is a Remington 700 platform and designed as a trainer for their larger centerfire rifles, are the way to go. So you're looking at a CZ MTR or a CZ in the Manor stock, or Bergara B14R would be my choices for around that 1K price point. Question number 9: I'm trying to see if I clean too much my Ruger RPR. Love the rifle, but all the ammo I've tried, including Center X, still doesn't have consistency. Lot testing is key. I know you try a lot and you get really frustrated. Some of it comes down to the shooter, right? Are you using stable shooting position, all that kind of stuff? Are you jerking the rifle? Do you not have are you shooting off a bipod in a bag, or do you have like a dedicated rifle rest, right? I mean, all this stuff contributes to the accuracy. So it may not be the inherent accuracy in the rifle itself, but in terms of cleaning, and going back to this other question in the comments here, cleaning routine, I don't think you can clean too much if you clean correctly. Now, if you don't have a bore guide, or you don't have you don't have the right size patches or the right rod, you could do more damage than good. But my cleaning regimen is basically, I'll make a video about it, but it's pretty simple. So I take a patch on a pistol brush, actually, one that doesn't rotate. Take a pistol brush, dip it in C4 Vortex C4 carbon remover, stick that in the chamber, and let it sit there for 5 minutes, right? And what I'm trying to do there is chemically, there's two ways to clean, right? There's chemical reaction, or there's basically abrasion, which means you're scrubbing stuff out. So what I do is I start with chemical, and I take C4 carbon cleaner, and I put it on a patch, stick it just in the chamber area of the barrel, and I'm trying to get rid of a carbon ring that forms from 22 MO, which is inherently dirty. So there'll be a carbon ring, and that's what I'm really trying to get after, because if I notice that if I let it go too long between cleanings, my rounds might start getting stuck, or the spent casings might get stuck in the chamber, because I have a very tight match chamber. So the tighter the chamber, the more prone you are, and the more you have to be on top of cleaning. So I stick that in there about 5 minutes, and then I literally take a 22 caliber nylon brush, put it on a drill, and just drill the chamber for like 10 to 30 seconds, and that carbon ring is gone. Now, as far as down the barrel, all I do after that is I push like one wet patch of either C4 carbon remover or rimfire blend or anything like that, one wet patch, and then like 1 or 2 dry patches until it's not wet anymore. And I don't really worry about scrubbing the down the barrel itself, because that, and there's other questions about this later in the video, but that seasoning, that the lubrication on the lead bullets is pretty much unique between, I would say, brands of ammo. So like SK and Lapua are the same company, so they usually use the same kind of lubrication. All of Ely's ammo, different lines of their ammunition use different lubrications. So for example, 10X, Ely Match, and Ely Team are all the same, but then you have like Club and Target, which use a different style lubrication and bullet. So as long as you're staying within the same family, you're fine. If you're going to switch between families or brands, I would clean the barrel. But I kind of want to keep that lubrication in the barrel, because then the barrel is quote unquote seasoned, and it's kind of accustomed to that lubrication. Otherwise, the first few rounds out of a totally clean barrel is going to be used to sort of deposit some of that lubrication down the barrel, and it, you might not have ultimate accuracy. If I do a full deep clean of my barrel, which I'll do every once in a while, especially if I'm going to go lot testing again, I want to start fresh. It takes about, I would say, 10 to 25 rounds before that barrel really gets seasoned in. So I hope that answered your question. You're probably not cleaning it too much unless you're cleaning it wrong. And then another thing I would suggest is kind of look around for, like, there's an aluminum tape bedding trick. Make sure all your tolerances and stuff are as tight as they can be. So there's like an aluminum tape bedding trick, which I might do a video on, but there's plenty of videos on YouTube already, where you basically take some aluminum foil tape and you kind of like use that to bed the action without actually using like bedding compound. That's one way to sort of get things a little tighter. Make sure your scope rings are correctly torqued and everything is not moving. Any movement or shifting in the scope is definitely going to mess up your accuracy. So I would check everything first, including check yourself, your shooting ability, and then you just got to keep going. It's part of the sport, unfortunately. Or you can send it off to the Lapua Testing Center, and they'll test it for you. And they'll basically have because they'll affix either the barreled action or the entire rifle into a clamp that's not going to move, and that will give you like the inherent accuracy of your rifle. But the cheapest ammo that you could buy from them would be Center X, and I don't know if you want to spend that kind of money for a Ruger RPR. I've been happy with SK in mine. I use SK Rifle Match and SK Long Range. They've been doing pretty well. And if you find that your rifle does like a certain brand of ammo, stay within that brand and just try and find the lot that works the best. Okay, moving on. Number 10, what current rifle in production would you like to see made into a 22 long rifle platform? I don't know. I thought about this question for a little bit, and it didn't really come up with a good answer. I mean, you have the examples there: Sig Cross or Howa 1500 Howa actions. Those are great. But if you look at it, like CZ, is known for a lot of things: pistol, rimfire rifles. They started making a centerfire bolt action rifle, like the CZ 600 or whatever. Tika, the T3, they have the T1. Bergara has centerfire rifles. They have now their B14, their trainer. Ruger has the Ruger Precision, and now they have Precision Rimfire. So a lot of companies have already made sort of the trainer. What was interesting, SHOT Show, I believe, had a lever action 22 rifle that was magazine fed. That'd be kind of cool. So if you got like maybe like a Henry rifle, but instead of being tube fed, have it like take Ruger magazines or something like that. Lever action would be kind of interesting, just a complete different instead of an actual bolt action, just a complete different mechanism for you know loading the rifle. I think that would be interesting, but I think most of the major manufacturers do kind of have rimfire trainers. Savage has rimfire trainers, so I think a lot of it is covered. All right, last the rifle questions. How do you get steady shooting positionals? This is kind of more match related, but I put it in the rifle section here because I think having a balanced rifle is probably the key to shooting anything off a barricade or position. Balance is key because if the rifle is balanced, once you get it in position on a bag or, bipod and all that kind of stuff, should be pretty stable anyway. But if you're on a position like a tank trap tip and you're on the bag and the rifle is balanced, you don't have to impart any additional movement to the rifle to kind of once you get it pointed in the right direction, it should stay there on its own if it's balanced. So I think step one is try and get your rifle as balanced as possible and have that balance point in front of the mag well. That's step one. Step two is really dependent on your body type, your flexibility, your athletic ability, all that kind of stuff. And I talk about this in a lot of my videos. It's, can you get lower to the ground? Can you fill in gaps of space with like a pump pillow underneath your arm, right? Or putting your elbow onto your thigh? Can you do something like that that gives you more points of contact? And, if you're in a kneeling position, is it one knee up or is it two knees up or that kind of stuff? So I'll make some more videos about different ways to position your body to get most comfortable. But I think starting with a balanced rifle, which is why I put this in the rifle section, is probably the first place to start. Question 12, do you think it's necessary to have a custom-built rifle such as Voodoo or Rimex to actually be competitive? It depends on what level of competitive you want to be, and the answer is no. And actually, it's a definitely not. I've seen people be competitive with factory CZs, with rifles that are straight out of the box. And when it comes to, I think people have this misconception, like you have to have a rifle that shoots one group, one hole groups or bug hole groups in order to be competitive. I want to take a moment here to kind of explain the most difficult target. So if you guys aren't aware, the NRL 22 has a standard target package, right? So if you're a match director, you have a standard target package. It comes from JC Steel Targets. It has, a 5-inch circle, 4-inch circle, 3-inch, all the way down. It has 2 KYL racks. It has 4 KYL targets. So that standard package is the package that is determined for the monthly course of fire, right, for the nation. So those are the only targets you're ever going to hit. And if you're using option 1, it's designed to be within a 100-yard range. And the smallest target in that package is the 1/4-inch KYL target. And the furthest I've ever seen it placed is 50 yards. And that's one shot out of the match, or multiple shots if the stage has you re-engage the 1/4-inch. But you get my point. It's one target out of a possible, 25 different targets. So that one target is a 1/4-inch at 50 yards. A 22 long rifle bullet is 0.224 inches in diameter. So if you have that 1/4-inch KYL target, you can basically be on either side of that half the thickness of the bullet. So if you take 0.25 inches plus 0.224 inches, theoretically, that's what, 0.474 inches? So let's call it half an inch. If your rifle can hold half an inch at 50 yards, which doesn't sound too hard to do, half-inch group is at 50 yards is 1 MOA, roughly speaking. So if you have a 1 MOA gun, or you can shoot half-inch group center to center on, which is like 0.7 edge to edge. If you can hold 0.5-inch groups at 50 yards, you have a rifle that is capable and accurate enough to hit every single target at a match that I've ever seen. Now, where do people lose points? You mess up the target order. You get the wind call wrong. You're not stable. You're not, practicing the fundamentals. So I want you to get in the head that, nearly any rifle with lot tested ammo that can shoot 0.5 or better, center to center, 0.5 inches at 50 yards, a 1 MOA gun has the potential to be able to hit every single target at an NRL match because that quarter inch is the smallest target we hit. Like I said, the farthest I've seen it is 50 yards. So every target is relatively larger than that, larger than one MOA. So if you can do that, now of course if you're doing that from prone or the bench, it's different than being on a barricade, right? So you really have to make sure that you're practicing that stuff rather than worrying about, is my gear good enough? You have to worry about, my gear is accurate to an extent. How do I make myself more accurate? I can't stress that enough. That's probably the biggest thing you need to learn. But having a Voodoo Rimex is nice, and obviously, the more accurate your gun, the the more forgiving it is when you're doing those long shots or you're doing wind. The tighter the grouping, obviously, the better it's going to be. But you don't need that to be successful if you do your part. All right, that was a long-winded way of answering that question, but I thought it was important. Vinny C says he made it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Send this link out to all your friends. Let's have a party in here. All right. Let's see. Question 13. With all your experiences so far, would you have invested, built a weapon system, and competed in the NRL 22 base class, or would you have gone into a different class altogether? Well, I haven't built a base class rifle. I kind of did it for this channel. It really depends. Base class is really. This is where I have some opinions about base class, and I don't know if the rules are going to change for next year, but we're going to get into this a little bit later in the discussion, but I'll save that for later. But would you, if you're base class is supposed to be an affordable way to get into the sport. Even if the rifles are affordable and the scopes are affordable, you can accessorize them and you can Gucci out. Like my RPR is Gucci'd out, right? Arca rail, weights, Timney trigger. The accessories I put on that rifle cost more than the rifle, which sounds ridiculously stupid because it is. So it becomes a sort of like arms race just to stay in the base class. So I think base class is really intended for people. I think the real intent behind base class should be, hey, I don't know if I want to do NRL 22 competition, but I want to see what it's all about. I have this old Ruger 1022. Go bring that, right? So it's not supposed to. You're not really supposed to make Gucci base class guns and try and like destroy everyone in base class. So if you, let's say you do like centerfire PRS, I think NRL 22 is a great trainer for that, right? So if you know you're already into that kind of competition. If you know you're already into that kind of competition, then basically, yeah, I would just say go to open class, buy a nicer rifle, go into open class. If you have a 1022 or something that's cheap and fits into base class, yeah, compete against base class, because then you get a better idea of who, your capabilities due to similar rifles, if that makes sense. So if you know you're going to go into the sport, start in open class. If you are unsure and you have a rifle that fits the base class criteria, compete in base class, and gives you a bit of more accurate representation of how you place amongst other base class competitors. All right, what are your thoughts on using a suppressor during competitions? Do they throw off accuracy of the rifle? They change point of impact. You're putting a big weight on the end of the barrel. I think the only way they can change accuracy is, I don't know if you can expect, if you have a really tight shooting, a lot of ammunition that comes in, without the suppressor. I don't know if you can expect it to perform the exact same with a suppressor. So if you know you're gonna use a suppressor, do your lot testing with the suppressor on, and then as that suppressor gets dirty, then basically, you might technically change sort of the harmonics and tune of the barrel as more and more weight gets deposited. It's possible it could throw you out of tune if your suppressor isn't clean or you don't have like a standard cleaning regimen for your suppressor. Yeah, if you're gonna shoot with a suppressor, I would do your lot testing with the suppressor. Otherwise, you'll be wondering why. You'll blame it on the suppressor that it's an accuracy change, but it's not. It's just that it's tuned differently because of the weight and all that kind of stuff. So, all right, 15. I have a stock 1022 that I'm slowly working to make more accurate. Can it be made more accurate enough to shoot? I think yes. My previous question. I'll never be a champion, but I do like to be competitive. Or I have a plenty accurate Savage Mark II. Its problem is magazines. Should I just work with the Savage or build out the 1022? Third option would be to buy both and sell CZ. I say if you're just starting in the sport, like I said before, if you don't have experience in the sport, just run what you have, see if you like it, and then you should be able to tell pretty quickly whether or not you want to invest in a rifle dedicated to the sport or just continue to plink and have fun with what you have. I still think you can be competitive. like I said, you don't have to be the most accurate gun out there in order to hit targets. It's more about you, and that's what this channel is dedicated towards, trying to help you find ways, creative ways to solve sort of the challenges of stages and go that way. All right. Any questions from the chat before we jump into match questions next? All right, just give me 1 second here, and we'll jump into match questions. So another big category was questions about matches in general. Number 1, do you have a series of drills that you practice fundamentals when not practicing any specific course of fire? Yeah, dry fire training. So I dry fire, and I think the best tool for dry fire training is 5 different positions on the ladder, right? And so, ladder, 5 different positions, put a 1-inch paster on the wall, and go that way, right? Just get into position. And what's really helped me is setting a par time on a shot timer and say, I want 15 seconds from the timer goes off to get into position, stable, and then be able to break a shot cleanly, right? And then you drop that to 12 seconds and then 10 seconds. And I think 10 seconds is a really good place to be for that first shot. Target acquisition, stable, and break the shot. I think 10 seconds is kind of the benchmark because the stages are 2 minutes. And, usually the most rounds we have are 12-round stages. So with that being said, you figure like 10 seconds per shot. So if you can get your par time down to 10 seconds to get in a position, stable, and yeah, and so dry fire is key. Doesn't have to be anything specific, right? It's just, and then after you come back from a match, if you're not training for that match specifically, then you kind of know what you did poorly on or what you did well on, right? So focus on what you didn't do as well on, like maybe on the NRL pyramid, like rungs 2 and 3 from the bottom are my most difficult. How do I get in a more stable position on those? Do I need different gear? Do I need to bring different bags? Do I need to take a different approach? Is it 2 knees down? Is it 1 knees down? So you kind of know what you need to work on. So like right now, probably what I'm working on now is those weird in-between heights, which are just between standing and kneeling. I need to be able to make a quicker decision on, am I going to go stand or am I going to like do a super high kneel, and which is more stable for me. So that's what I'm working on. Got some questions in the comments here. Senior competition videos where the scope is out of focus, but you still make the shot. Do you feel that changing the parallax for focus isn't always needed? I will say with the trigger cam that I use, and it's difficult to kind of get in perfect focus for the trigger cam for all the different magnifications that I use during a stage. So you'll see me playing with the parallax knob on my scope, right? And to me, what I see through the scope is more in focus sometimes than what you see, because because all scopes and camera lenses and all that kind of stuff have this thing that's called focus breathing. So as you change the zoom or the magnification, that plane of focus kind of shifts, and that camera is so sensitive because it's a 4K camera on the back of your scope that it picks that up. So there is a way to adjust the focus, but I usually set that for about like 15 power and about at like 50 yards, right? So, but if I change parallax to like infinity, there's probably a better way that I can go about getting more stuff in focus at the same time. So unfortunately, what you see is sometimes more blurry than what I see, right? Because of the way I've focused the camera. And I often take it off and put it onto other rifles, right? Because I can't afford to have 4 or 5 trigger cams laying around. But that being said, what you see might be a little bit more blurry than what I see. Usually I am adjusting parallax to put things in focus, and but there's sometimes that you don't have time, right? So you kind of have to make a judgment call. Like on March Course of Fire, right? We had the KYL rack and then 2 further targets. I was changing parallax, and I think I was holding over also. So I was holding over, but I was changing parallax because I want to be super zoomed in for that KYL rack above 25 power, right? And that makes the parallax differences worse because you have a more shallow depth of field the higher you're magnified. So that being said, I was changing parallax, but I probably didn't need to change parallax between the second and third target because they're a little bit closer together in distance versus the first target at 40 yards. I was changing parallax. Have you tried a Manners on my CZ? No, I called them, and it's about a 6-month lead time for a Manners stock, especially the new one, the new, what I call it, the TCS, tunable something stock, which looks really interesting, has a flat bottom, is already pretty much set up to attach a weighted Arca rail. Looks really cool. I wanted one. I was thinking about getting it, but I didn't want to wait 6 to 8 months, so I got something else, which you'll see in future videos. My friends with Manners have had, they really like them, and I think Manners is a great company. I just didn't want to wait 6 to 8 months to get a stock. Quality Guru said just joined, so we'll need to replay. It will be up. The whole video will be up later. And Mark says, do you practice much weak side or offhand? What about standing unsupported? It depends on where you are with your journey. At this point, I need to know how to do those things, shooting support side and shooting positional unsupported, like with a sling, because and I'm not trying to like toot my own horn by any means, but if you're competing for top spaces and you're in the top 3 to 5 consistently in a match, and you come across a match where those stages with support side or unsupported, sling position, standing, kneeling, that kind of stuff, that's going to be the decider. Who has practiced that stuff and can make impacts in those weird one-off scenarios, because at the top, first, second, third, fourth place might be decided by less than 3 points. So if you're dropping points because you didn't practice that, then you're not gonna be in the top anymore. If you're kind of around like the midfield, I wouldn't necessarily. I would focus more time on shots that you see a larger percentage of. So your tank trap stage, your ladder stage, your 55-gallon barrel stage, the 5-gallon bucket, 2-gallon bucket, all of that is transferable to multiple different barricades, positions, all that kind of stuff. Getting stable there is going to net you more points in the long run than the one-off stage that has some weird standing unsupported shot, right? Because we don't see those come across very often. But nearly every month there is a tank trap stage. At least every other month there's a tank trap stage. There's more and more NRL pyramid stages. So I would focus on those until you start getting into like that top 3, top 5 at your matches, and then that'll be the difference between the winners. All right, back to this. Question 2, how do I get... Okay, so the next 2 are kind of similar, right? So how do I get NRL matches held closer to me, and how would you go about getting a local gun club that has the 100 yards to do a monthly NRL 22 match? So it's kind of like you kind of present a value proposition to the range, to the club, right? So hosting NRL 22 matches will definitely bring in eyes to the club. So if that club has like membership dues and all that kind of stuff, it might encourage people to get members. If you have a bunch of friends who are dedicated to signing up, then that's one way to do it. So roughly around this area, NRL 22 matches, the entry fees per month are like $20 or $25, right? So you got to figure that into how many people you can have sign up per month, how much it would cost the range to basically reserve that range. Our matches of like 20 to 30 competitors probably take about 4 to 5 hours. So like 7 a.m. and we're done by like noon, right? So 5 hours of time at the range. Talk to the people at the range. Talk to the, ranges usually have like a board of directors or they have someone in charge, and bring out that value proposition. Say, okay, there's interest for this. We're going to charge this. How much would it cost to reserve that range for 5 hours on a Sunday? Which might be if it's a busy time for them and they make way more money from the general public, then it's going to be a hard value proposition, right? And then as a match director, there's all the safety and all that kind of stuff. And then if you want to register a club, there's a fee for that. I think it's a nominal fee. It's probably like, I don't want to misspeak, but it's probably like $50 a year to register your club. And then each match that you want to submit scores for the national rankings, I think it's like $35. So if you get 7 people to sign up, $5 goes to the NRL, and then you also have to provide all the targets and all of the barricades, right? So there's a standard barricade list. The tires and the 55-gallon drum I've been able to get for free. And then the tank trap, pyramid, rooftop, you have to build. and there's some other odds and ends like a 5 gallon bucket. So you have to factor in the cost of all that. Then, like I said before, JC Steel Targets has a standard target package. It's like $300 or $400, and I think you get a discount if you're a match director. So if you're signing up a new club, so it's probably like then you have to get like tablets and the practice score app, which is free. But if you want to run tablets, that's one thing. You can keep score on paper, and that's what a lot of people do when they start until they invest more. So there's an upfront cost, but there is a value proposition for bringing eyes to the club, making revenue for the actual shooting range, and getting matches closer to you and hosting. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of work if you're a match director. I don't know if I would want to be a match director. The match directors we have here in Phoenix are spectacular. They do so much for the sport. It's unreal. But that's kind of how you would go about getting either a local club or a match as close to you is make one, And there's a lot of match director resources on their NRL 22 website, and I'm sure they would love to hear from you. If you email them, I'm sure they'll answer all your questions because they obviously want to sign up more clubs. All right, question number 4 on match questions. I guess my question would be, is it more important to be highly competitive or to have fun? It depends on what kind of person you are and your personality. I think competitive is definitely a part of it, but you don't want to be so competitive that it's preventing you from having fun, right? And that's really like a personality and mindset thing. So you really want to make sure that you're there to have fun, and maybe fun for you is winning and competing, right? But don't let not doing well supersede the fact that you're there to have fun, empower other people in the sport, be a good ambassador for the sport. Don't get so down and start cursing and this and that. And we've all been there. It's always frustrating when something isn't going right or your rifle has a malfunction or something. We've all been there. But having fun is really, safety is number one, fun is number two, and then if you're a competitive kind of person, that's always can be fun, but don't let it affect you negatively mentally. Number 5, what I'd like to see in a video is your pre-setup before match, which includes how much ammo is needed, how you prepare mentally, physically, weather conditions, going from state to state. I should do that. I kind of gave you a what to expect your first NRL match video that was really well received. What I should do is like a what's in my bag, what's in my range bag before I go to a match, and all the pre-match prep. So I definitely will do that. Thank you for the suggestion. If you change anything, rule or otherwise, about NRL 22, keep it challenging and interesting, what would it change? So this is where I would change the base class rules. So I think they should eliminate base class, and I think they should replace it with a different class. And I would like to see like a spec class where everyone has the same gear. So I think it'd be really interesting. So if you guys have noticed on the NRL 22 Courses of Fire, Savage's logo is in the top right corner. So Savage has sponsored to be there, right? So if you have Savage as a sponsor for the next season, say for like the next, and you could do it like 2 years at a time, right? Go get an agreement with Savage, with some bipod manufacturer, with Armageddon Gear or Coltac or something, right? And be like, here is the spec loadout. So it's like Call of Duty, like here's your loadout, right? And you're in the spec class. So you would have like either a Savage Mark II or one of the other Savage 22 rifles, right? So Savage rifle, Harris bipod, and like Armageddon Gear, Schmedium Game Changer, right? That's your loadout, and a scope sponsor as well. So maybe like a Vortex Strike Eagle, right? Something like super popular. Athlon is super popular, and these people love to advertise. And you say, here's coupon codes for all these companies to buy this gear. You get some percentage off of MSRP, right? And that's the loadout. That loadout is like this Savage rifle, this scope, Vortex scope with maybe Vortex rings, and Harris bipod, all relatively affordable stuff, right? Relatively speaking. And you can use like these 3 bags or something like that. And so everyone who is competing with the exact same gear. So, and like limiting the bags too, right? So you can have a sling or like whatever, and like you can have like a bag. I think that would be like that'd be really fun because like everyone then has the same gear. It's like, like stock car racing where, everything is supposed to be like within some sort of spec, right? Or actually it's like spec series racing. Like if you ever saw those, like everyone's driving the same Mazda Miata kind of thing. That would be really cool if there was a spec class instead of base class. So make an affordable spec class where everyone has the same gear and see who can do the best. I think that'd be really cool instead of a base class, which really is turning into a crazy arms race anyway. Unless they change the rules next year, we'll see. Mark says, can you do a video start to finish on using a Kestrel at a stage, not super in depth of settings, but more how you walk up to a stage? That's a great idea. I will have to do that. But basically, what it comes down to, just to give you a quick and simple, dirty explanation, is during the beginning of the stage, not the stage, beginning of the match, I like do the compass calibration on my Kestrel, right? So get everything like calibrated, so it's and then I spin up my Kestrel, take a weather reading, and then lock it. I don't keep it live. And then before a stage, if I feel there's been a huge change in like density, altitude, or station pressure or something, or temperature or whatever, spin up the Kestrel again, unlock it, get a temperature reading, lock it again, and then I basically ping my target by pressing the center button at the target, and my compass is already calibrated from before. So I got my target direction. I find the wind direction. I have a little like wind flag on my binoculars, so I know which way is the wind going. So then I hold it into the wind, take a wind reading, and then your wind 1 and wind 2 on the Kestrel. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, I'll make a video about it. But wind 1 and wind 2 is basically, wind 1 is your average wind, and I think wind 2 is your like highest wind, your gust, and that gives you your brackets. And then basically put that into my dope card and go from there. And I try and do that. Like I might take like one reading like right before I go up just to make sure, but that's pretty much what it is. Let's see. Some more questions in the chat here. North Carolina has the Piedmont Handgunners Association that started a new class for 2024, budget class, where gun club gives ammo to shooters that are 10 cents or less per round. That's pretty cool. Purchase from match director on the day of the match. Thoughts on that as an equalizer? I could see that working for handguns, but unfortunately, like rimfire rifles are so sensitive, even like lot by lot. So, I mean, if everyone's using the same ammo for that match for the day, theoretically, it should be a more level playing field. But you might have some rifles that like it and some that don't. I mean, rimfire is so picky and so particular; it is absolutely ridiculous. So that could be an interesting thing. In practice, I don't know how well that would work. But yeah, going back to my sort of like spec class, like your ammo has to be less than maybe like $10 a box, right? So that eliminates all of Lapua's ammo. So no Center X, no Ely match. So you're basically limited like Ely team, club, target, SK, rifle, match. Basically those cheaper ammos. I like that idea. I don't know how it will work in practice because I think part of the allure of the sport in both, pursuing accuracy and also responsible for mass frustration is the lot testing portion of it. It is kind of cool to see how accurate you can get a rifle just by doing different tests with different ammo. But interesting idea. All right. Question 8 is kind of cut off. I just copied these directly from the emails. It says, "Our website or list of events and arrows that are," I'm assuming that's going to mean spectator friendly. Most events are spectator friendly. If you go to a range, you have to follow the range's rules, which usually means eye and ear protection. This goes across the country. So eye and ear protection is usually required. And on practice score, if you look at the events, there's usually a match director contact information. So you can contact them and say, "Hey, do you mind if I'm thinking about competing, or I'm just curious about what you guys do. Can I come by and watch? If so, what do I do to stay out of people's way?" So people are there to compete, and some people get very competitive. So you don't want to be like hovering over someone's shoulder, like, "Hey, what gun are you using? What ammo are you doing? What?" So, but usually people are very friendly, and as long as they're not like in the heat of competition, before the match, after the match, they can answer all kinds of questions. So, go to practice score, find events, know the range rules, and contact the match director. Number 9, what is the difference between PRS and NRL-22? So I believe you mean PRS rimfire. PRS is the Precision Rifle Series, and NRL-22 is NRL-22. NRL-22 releases a course of fire of 5 stages every month that the entire country abides by. Your individual match director may introduce additional club stages to make it a more value add for you, add some additional challenge. But those 5 stages for NRL-22 are the same across the country for that month. PRS rimfire, every match is decided by the match director, all of the stages. So it's a completely custom course of fire by the match director. Other differences include PRS does not have a base class. They have a production class, which has slightly different rules, slightly higher cost cap of, like, I believe, $1,500 for rifle and scope, but you can't make trigger modifications. You can't do this. You can't do that. So the rules are slightly different. Open is pretty much anything goes between the two. There's a production class. PRS might actually have a dedicated semi-auto class. I'm not sure if they do, but they might have something for like your 1022 builds, your kid builds, your Volkortzen builds, all that kind of stuff. They might have a dedicated semi-auto class. And yeah, so I think PRS has the potential to be more challenging depending on how sadistic your match director is. And PRS is not necessarily limited to the 100 yards. So neither is NRL 22. Option 2 goes up to 200 yards, but PRS can go past 200 yards. So it could be, 300 yards shots. So it depends on the match director. I think PRS is a little bit more challenging. And unlike NRL 22, I cannot see the matches and the stages in advance. So I don't know what to practice. So it's a better test of like your ability to come problem solve on the fly. You go up to a stage, read the description. Okay, how am I going to tackle this? So I think NRL 22, all the practice and preparation that goes into that helps you decide, oh, this is like another stage. I know what to do here. This works. This doesn't work. I'm going to go with this strategy. So I say do both. What would be your top 10 things you wish you knew before your first competition? Top 10 would be a lot to cover. I don't know if I can count to 10. But before first competition, I think, like we kind of talked about earlier, that accuracy is not the be-all, end-all. Accuracy is definitely an advantage, but it's not going to make you necessarily... If the gun is super accurate and you're not, the gun is no longer accurate, right? So really, what I tell new shooters and what I wish I knew beforehand was getting a stable position, time management on the clock, fast target acquisition, trusting the gear, and just keeping your head in the game are probably like the top 5 things. And they're all mental, right? They're all mental and have nothing to do with the rifle, right? If your rifle can shoot when you get down and comfortable on a bench or prone and it shoots well, the rifle can shoot well anywhere. It's just a matter of, can you get the rifle stable enough and break clean shots and have good trigger discipline and fundamentals and all that stuff, and can you find the targets, right? Can you get stable, and can you keep your head in the game long enough to, not get frustrated and make stupid mistakes and miss target orders and that kind of stuff, right? So I would say this game is probably 70% mental, 25% maybe the gun and, scope and ammo and all that kind of stuff, and then 5% luck, wind, that kind of stuff. So it's majority mental is the key here. All right, some more match questions. What's your strategy on reading the wind, especially on longer shots? Okay, speaking of the wind, I have a Kestrel. Kestrel tells you something. And then what's really important that I don't see a lot of competitors necessarily doing, especially when they first start out, is get a pair of binoculars, find the targets, and look at like wind flags, mirage, and then a lot of it comes with experience too. So I know at certain ranges, because of the way the berms are set up on different parts of the range, the wind does like weird dippy things and it goes around and, it does swirly bits. You kind of learn the terrain. And if you're watching someone else shoot, especially if you're close to like right behind them, sometimes you can see the trace and you'll see the bullet kind of get pushed back and forth, and you'll kind of learn what different parts of the range are doing to the bullet. So watching the wind and other people shoot is huge. Kestrel obviously gives you like a baseline starting point, but then you have to make a judgment call, because usually you're only taking wind at the location that you're shooting. And, you kind of have to get a feel for like what the terrain does out there. So mirage is huge. So if you take your binoculars or even your scope and you kind of defocus it a little bit, you can kind of get a little bit of blur and you see more of that mirage, which is sort of the heat coming off the ground. You see like waves, and if it's boiling, if it's going like straight up, there's very little wind, and then you see if it goes right to left to right or anything like that. So learning to sort of read flags, mirage, all that kind of stuff, it just comes with practice, and you have to get out there and do it. So you can go into an indoor range and you can shoot one whole groups in paper all day, but in the real world, you just have to get out and experience wind and learn what it does to your rifle. Every rifle is going to react differently. Luckily, we're all shooting the same cartridge, so the wind effects, depending on your velocity, are going to be pretty similar, but it's still going to depend on your specific combination of ingredients when it comes to what the wind does. Got to learn by doing. There's no other way to do it. You just have to learn how to read the wind through trial and error. Quality Guru says, there are no NRL 22 matches near me. How would one go about starting an NRL 22 club so we can approach a 100-yard range for a NRL 22 match? I answered that question a few minutes ago, if you go back in the video. But basically, just to recap real quick, create a value proposition for the range, because they have to weigh the cost of shutting down the range for your competition versus what the money they could make from either other competition groups or the general public, right? So you got to create a value prop and say, hey, we anticipate bringing in, X number of competitors, and, how much would it cost to basically rent the range for this amount of time with those competitors? They might be interested in becoming members, it's a value for you. And then you have to weigh basically that against the time and money and effort is to set up and host a match between buying the targets, building the barricades, organizing everything. There's a couple of dues you have to pay, one annual and one monthly due for each match that you attend, submitting the practice score. It's a lot of work behind the scenes, but it's doable. But it really starts with making that value proposition with the range and say, hey, we want to bring you revenue, but we want, sort of a group rate or a discount rate to use the facilities here to do that. So there's a lot of resources on the NRL 22 website for potential match directors, and you can always reach out to them. They probably have. I would reach out to the NRL 22 and say, hey, what resource do you have for someone who's looking to approach a shooting range to be a NRL 22 club and or host matches? And they should want to point you in the right direction. All right, match questions. What do you think about adding a semi-automatic class to NRL 22? Any ideas on how to get more people in the sport? Our club had a loaner rifle first match free. That's all good stuff. So semi-automatic class, I think that will become another arms race. Honestly, because when you think semi-automatic, you think like, I don't know, maybe like an M&P 22, right, or a 1022, Ruger 1022. But then it's going to be, semi-auto class. I'm going to bring my $3,000 Volkortzen or Kid rifle and just smoke the competition with my custom barrel and this and that and the other thing. So I think it becomes an arm race. I spoke briefly on some of the base class things that I think we could see in the sport. But yeah. And then long question here, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Okay. PRS rimfire versus NRL 22. We kind of touched on that. They are similar, a little bit different. I don't know. Just be happy that there's matches around you. What do you suggest for backup plan for unforeseen snafus at the range? After you made your dial-up holdover, see this gun is telling you it's changing point of impact. Do you have any gun running techniques to employ? Yeah, this one is important, right? So if something goes wrong, like you take a shot and it lands way off, right? And it could be because of wind, it could be because you didn't dial right. But if you're confident everything's right with your ballistic solution and you see something go way off, it always helps to know the target sizes. NRL 22 publishes them. So if I know if I'm off, let's say the target is like a 1 mil wide target, right? And I shoot the right edge because there's a right to left wind. So I shoot the right edge and it goes off the target, right? That means to get back to center of the target, it's at least half a mil hold, right? So make bold corrections. Other than that, yeah, you just have to be able to follow through on your trigger discipline. So having follow through helps you see the shot. And if you can spot your misses, you should be able to make corrections off of that. Do I dial or anything like that? No, I try usually, as long as I'm confident my elevation is good, I don't dial more or less wind in there. I just hold over more. All right, moving on. Maybe we'll go rapid fire through these. Those are the two big categories. Thanks for everyone for sticking around. Bags. I made a video about bags. It was very well received from the people who left nice comments and hopefully helped you do that. So that was one good thing that came out of sort of this questionnaire was bags. So a lot of the questions here are covered in there. What do you fill to use in my bags? It depends on the bag size. I prefer a heavier fill, but I don't like the bag to be so damn packed full that it doesn't move, right? You want the bag to have some give. So I just took a cup, actually, I took a pound out of my medium game changer of the heavy fill sound out. So it was a little bit more flexible. What's the best way to use bag during the matches? What are they filled with? Soft, stiff, heavy, light? What does shooter really need? It comes down to personal preference. You want a bag that conforms to the prop that is designed to wrap around in a repeatable manner. So for the medium, probably the best all-around bag on the market. You want it to be able to go on a tank trap tip, over a 2x4, over a metal bar, and then sideways lay it on a bucket or something like that. So as long as it settles and gives you a level shooting platform and a large surface area to put your rifle on, then it's doing the right thing. So you either have to add more or less fill, and then weight is a matter of personal preference. I like heavier bags than lighter bags when it comes to that kind of stuff. But if your bag is very, very large, then having a heavy, large bag is probably too cumbersome to move around. So you want it as heavy as it is to be manageable. Could you do a bag on use of bags for beginners? I kind of talked about in my bag overview video, but I will do more videos about how to use bags. And the last one's a little bit more same line on heavy fill and all that kind of stuff. Okay, question in the comments. As part of your kit, you have a toolbox, say about shoebox size. I don't have anything that big. I have a pair of fix-it sticks or a pack of, it's like this big. It's a little fix-it sticks thing. So it's got basically a bunch of bits and bobs, different bits for torques, for hex, and all that kind of stuff. It's got the torque limiter. So if I have to retorque something, usually not. I probably have a couple of little like picks, one of those army cleaning, like AR cleaning, like toothbrush things if I need to clean something out. But I don't have a full toolbox. I haven't found it necessary, but some sort of multi-tool would probably get you 90% of the stuff, unless something goes catastrophically wrong, and then that's a whole different story. All right, let's go some more rapid fire gear questions. Red dot mounted on a diving board. Yeah, that can be used for target acquisition, but it can be a crutch. But if it helps you score more points, I don't see why not. I don't think it's a necessary additional expense. But if you think it can help you, then I don't see why it wouldn't do that. A lot of people do that in both PRS and RL22. Does $700 bipod make better groups than a $50 or $75 bipod? Better groups comes down to stability, and there are some bipods that are more stable and some that are less stable. So as long as it provides you the stability, then it should be fine. I think what I would say is, don't buy some super cheap off of Amazon, Wish.com, Temu bipod. I think Harris bipods are probably like the lower bound of what I would go with for something that's reliable, trustworthy. It doesn't have to be super expensive. It doesn't have to be a Skypod. It doesn't have to be Accutac or like any of those guys, but they make good stuff, and they have features that are very versatile that help come up with creative shooting solutions. So it's definitely possible to gain an advantage with a more expensive bipod, but it's not necessary. Thoughts on the Kestrel 2700 versus 5700? If you're only going to use one gun, Kestrel 2700 is probably okay. 5700 allows for multiple profiles, allows for a little bit better atmospheric and weather condition tracking. 2700 is probably good enough for one gun. Instead of buying a 2700, what I might do is get a $10 or $20 or $30 phone app like Shooter or Applied Ballistics, or I know Strelok is hard to get now. Strelok was really good, but I think he got hit with Russian sanctions and all that kind of stuff. So that is, find yourself an app. It will get you most of the way there. And I would maybe save up for the 5700 if you're going to have multiple guns and take the sport really seriously. The 5700 is very nice, but it's not necessary. Bag plate mounting systems, gear. I will do a video on that. Actually, a friend of mine actually gave me a Coltac backbone, so now I'll be able to compare three. I have a pair of MDT Baker wings coming in, which I'll also include in that review. So that is coming down the pipeline. Wondering if you can do comparison video. Barrel tuners. Oh, God. Can of worms. I know this is probably a really loaded question. I've been trying to do a barrel tuner video for like the last 2 years, and I am down the rabbit hole. I am down deep in the rabbit hole, and the results are still inconclusive. So what I want to do is I want to present all of the research and theory that I've done, and then I need to go find a 100-yard indoor range with no wind, no outside influence, where I can actually test all of these hypotheses. It's going to be a very expensive endeavor in terms of ammo, but it's been in the works. It will still be in the works for a long time. But if you believe people like Eric Cortina and all that kind of stuff who sell tuners, they work. If you believe Brian Litz and Hornady, go look up Hornady's podcast, number 110. They talk about barrel tuners. They believe they don't work. I think the answer is somewhere in between. I think there are certain scenarios where you can tune a rifle, but I don't think people actually know what they're doing when they're tuning, so they don't actually they might get lucky and land on something that makes the rifle better out of pure luck, and they praise tuners, and other people say they don't work because they don't know what they're doing. So very loaded question, very difficult to answer in this amount of time. How often and thorough do you clean your gun and wax your bags? Waxing bags, I don't necessarily do, maybe once a year if I notice something is rubbed off. How often do I clean my rifle? Basically, every time I shoot, I clean out the chamber. I did talk about that a little bit. Clean the chamber, put some carbon remover in there, let it sit, get a brush the crap out of the chamber. I push a couple patches down the barrel just to make sure all the fluid is out, and that's about it. If I'm going from using the same ammo before cleaning and after cleaning, if I'm changing ammo completely, I'll do a little bit of deeper scrub, get all of the lubrication out of the barrel. If I'm going to change between brands of ammunition, like if I'm going between Lapua and Ely. All right, scope questions. Let's see, 2 questions. What do you consider the 2 most important features not to compromise on an important competition? Probably you need dialable turrets, and you need tracking and repeatability of those turrets. And for me, it's probably the reticle, which is probably a personal preference, but a Christmas tree reticle that has both markings for elevation and windage across the elevation range. Called a Christmas tree reticle. And I think that's really important. Because when you do need to hold over, you need to know where you're holding over. And then having like 0.2 of a mil resolution instead of 0.5 mil resolution is a huge advantage. But those are usually only found on the higher end scopes. Have you ever wanted to switch your Bushnell to have a larger main tube and front objective to have more light in? I live in the Valley of the Sun, Arizona, so it's sunny enough that I don't really need all of that extra light gathering ability. And so I haven't found the need to. But if you live in places where it's really, really early in the morning and it's dark, then you might need that. Give me 1 second. Had to kick my dog out. All right. Rapid fire general advice or mental questions. Yeah, okay. Mental questions. How do top shooters train for the mental aspects of the games? With winning in mind is required reading for any competitive shooter. All right. It's a book by Larry Basham. He was an Olympic shooter, and it is essential reading. It is your book report, mandatory reading for class. But other than that, it is really keeping negative thoughts out of your head, having confidence in your ability, which will grow with time, and look at everything as something that worked, as a success, and something that didn't work as an opportunity to improve. It's really like you have to have a positive mindset. You can't say, you can't even say to yourself, don't miss the target, because you're already thinking about missing the target. Like, don't even say, oh, I can do really well at this match if I just don't miss, right? But that miss is already a negative idea that's in your head. So you say, I can win this match. I'm just going to hit every target. Boom, 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 boom. Power of positive thinking. It sounds silly, but read Lenny Basham's book with winning in mind. Mandatory reading for any competitive shooter, and take those tips to heart. What are your steps, strong ones, weak ones, and how do you go about evaluating, troubleshooting, and develop your shot process? It kind of evolves over time, right? Your process changes. I'll probably have to make a video about that. And I know it's kind of a cop-out, so I'm not really answering that, but I'll have to make a video about the process. There's kind of like the pre-stage process. There's the during the stage, fundamentals of trigger discipline, shooting, breathing, technique, actually shooting, the actual act of shooting. And then sort of like the post, doing a post-mortem sort of analysis of what happened, what went wrong, what went right, that kind of stuff. So there's different processes along the way, and each has their own unique ability. All right, ammo questions. Lots of ammo questions. Everyone wants to know what the best ammo is. Lot testing, but elaboration would be great on what you enjoy for day-to-day shooting, or you spend the big money all the time for the latest and greatest. If I'm plinking, if I'm just having fun, if I'm shooting a rimfire pistol, it's CCI, standard velocity, all day, every day. When you do lot testing, yeah, I mean, you have to, I'm going to compete with the ammo that basically works the best, right? So, but I don't really switch back and forth. Once I find an ammo that I like, you just stick with it. And I do more dry fire practice than anything because I don't want to waste a bunch of ammo, especially the expensive ammo, just sending rounds down range unless I'm actively trying to gather data. So if I'm going to use match ammo during like a practice session, it better be for data gathering, long range verification of data, that kind of stuff. It should not be just for, let's see how many times I can hit the 1/4-inch KYL rag. Like I can hit it if I do my part. I don't need to hit it 20 times to figure that out, right? Just curious, what ammo do you use for matches and practice the same ammo? So right now, I have a lot tested Lapua Midas Plus is what I've found. It shoots incredibly well. It makes me feel bad whenever I miss a shot because it can't miss. It's only me that can miss. And how much money should someone invest in a budget rifle and set up before you get to Intel and go with a big one? Why is there not a better standard of NRL-22 to make sure all the profits are the same? Yeah, there's a bunch of questions in there. I don't practice with ammo. I dry fire, so I don't practice with good ammo unless, like I said, I'm data gathering. And how much should you invest in a budget rifle before you throw in the towel? I mean, everyone's financial situation is different, and yeah, I mean, you can have a lot of fun. Like I said, we talked way earlier in this video about the minimum standard of accuracy, which is a lot less accurate than you think you need to be. So as long as you're having fun, that's one thing. And if you want to take the leap and be competitive, and that's going to be the fun part for you, then save your money for pretty pennies for a higher end rifle. And why is there not a better standard? That's a really great question. I think the NRL-22 pyramid is probably the most standardized, with full plans and dimensions and stuff. But in terms of tank traps, I've seen tank traps 6-foot legs, 5-foot legs, 4-foot legs. Rooftops. Some are carpeted, some are not. Some have little 2x4s at the bottom to put your feet. Some don't. I think NRL-22 could probably do a better job of revising those plans to dictate sizes and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's your match director's responsibility, and they're putting in a lot of work to try and make things happen. So they might also be limited by what resources they have. So don't take it too hard on those guys. All right, question number 3: what is the best distance for lot testing ammo on a new build? 50 yards. 0 is 50 yards. Test at 50 yards. You should be able to tell what does well at 50 yards, and by the time you get 100 yards, there's a little bit too much dispersion and a little too much environmental stuff going on. Second, when you get an ammo that performs well in the firearm, do you continue testing other ammo or just stick with that works? I will, once I find something that works up to my level of expectation, which is usually hopefully a 1/4 minute or better, consistently over 5-shot groups at 50 yards, which is a high standard of accuracy, I know, but I find that and I stick with it until I have less than 500 rounds of that ammo left, and then I have to start the lot testing process all over again. But what I will probably do is stick with that same family of ammunition. So if I'm shooting Lapua Center X, I'll look for other lots of Lapua Center X, or maybe move up to Midas Plus, or vice versa. Move from Midas Plus back down to Center X. I won't start going to Ely, randomly, unless I have no availability of the other families of ammunition in that same sort of environment, ecosphere. All right, barrel seasoning. Question number 4. Never clean the rifles except the chamber carburing. That's pretty much what I do. 1,000-round seasoning, that's ridiculous. Your barrel should be seasoned within 10 to 25 shots max. And don't even do lot testing until 1,000 round minimum. I don't buy that either. If you look at Lapua's testing center website, I think they recommend any new barrel have 200 to 300 rounds down it before you send it in for testing. I think that's pretty fair. So yeah, you could take some Thunderbolt and just send it down range, as long as it's not copper plated, as long as it's a lead bullet, right? If you want to just wear in the barrel, right? Break in the barrel break in, which shouldn't really be necessary. But you know, you could use cheaper ammo like CCI, standard velocity, or anything that has like a lead bullet that's not copper plated. Shoot a bunch of stuff, have fun. You know, use that as training time. You know, don't just send rounds downrange for the sake of sending rounds downrange. Do some positional shootings, get stable, learn the rifle, learn the trigger, all that kind of stuff, and then do a thorough cleaning after however many rounds you feel is appropriate, and then after that, then you start your lot testing adventure. Let's see. Some questions from the chat here. Congrats on Nationals invite. I haven't necessarily gotten it yet, but I am like in a 25-way tie for first. So I should qualify. That should qualify me for an invitation to Nationals. Can you explain again how you competed in both base class and in limited class with the same rifle? They were not the same rifle. So I have my CZ as my open gun, and the Ruger Precision Rimfire is my base class gun. So they are not the same rifle. And Fractal Pepper says, "Hey, hello, Jonathan Cook." Yeah, figured that question. Yeah, I think you're talking about the whole process video. That is a lot to go into, and we're already been here an hour and 20 minutes, which is great. I'm glad people are still sticking around, jumping in and out. I'm having fun. You're having fun, hopefully. Thumbs up in the comments. It's my birthday today, so I'm spending it with you guys. So answering your questions and giving away a bipod very shortly once we get through these questions. So thanks for sticking around. Hope this is valuable information answering your questions here. Okay, what is your method of selecting ammo for matches? What yardages do you use to measure, even testing from lot to lot? Realistically, what's an accurate threshold? We've kind of talked about this a little bit. If you can hold one MOA half an inch at 50 yards, I think you're good to go. So I test everything at 50, and then I start doing verification at longer ranges. So I go 50, find something that shoots 0.5 inches or better 5-shot groups, hopefully around the 0.3s is where I really want to be. And then I go to 100, check for group size there. I would really like to be under like 1.25 inches at 100 yards. And then you start going like 150, 200, 250 for long range dope verification, if that's the ammo that you're going to use in competition. So we are testing at 50 and then doing basically dope verifications all along the way once you find an ammo that works well at 50. But all testing I do is at 50 yards. All right, on to some general questions. This is the last round of questions, and then we're going to do the random draw. What advice would you give to a new shooter who's just getting started? Just do it. Just take the plunge, go to a match, and rock and roll. Run what you got, borrow anything else that you need. People are super friendly. And don't take it too seriously, but if you want to be competitive, make sure you have an idea of, be able to be self-critical of what you need to work on, what you need to practice. And then if you want to be competitive, you got to put in the time and actually practice those things. But go to a match, make a bunch of friends, shake a bunch of hands, introduce yourself. If they know you're new, they, in my experience, 9 out of 10 people is going to be super duper, friendly, and they're gonna help you out and have a good time. How do you decide when to dial or hold over? Dial if you can, hold over if you must. That's kind of my mantra. If you have time to dial, dial. And if not, hold over. And only hold over if the holdovers make sense. If your holdover is like 0.7, mils or something like that, it's kind of weird. But if the numbers line up, like, oh, my first hold is 0.5 mil, second one's 1.5 mils, like nice even 0.5 mil hash marks on your scope, then it kind of makes sense. If you're going for speed, you're going to hold over. If you're a new shooter, dial everything and don't worry about timing out. The speed will come, but it's going to be much easier to aim at targets that are right in the middle of your crosshairs when you're just starting out, when target acquisition, all that kind of stuff is still new to you. So if you're a new shooter, dial. If you're an experienced shooter, dial if you can. And Quality Guru said, is it worth to add an Arca rail to my wooden stock CZ rifle or just get an aftermarket stock? It depends. I don't know if you heard earlier, but we talked about, this is the MTR. We have these things in here, these T-nuts with like the spikes on them that you put in there. So I've done it. I've put an Arca rail on a wooden stock. It might affect the resale value. I don't know if that's something that you're worried about. But it also depends if you're like in open class or base class or anything like that, because it might put you out of base class if you go change the configuration of your stock. If you want to go from like a manners to a manner stock that has stuff already milled for rail, anything like that, I'd say go for it. But if you think you can sell the stock for whatever $100 and then buy another aftermarket stock that has like a KRG Bravo or something that has a space dedicated for like an anchor rail, then that's up to you. But it might move you from base class to open class if you're not already competing in open class. All right, my question is more like, what are other spots to shoot in AZ? This is kind of like an Arizona specific question. I think this person was talking about, BLM land versus like the different shooting ranges in here. My response to that person would probably be, I think Cowtown's probably your next bet. It's a members only club, but they have a lot of awesome resources, and a lot of you can shoot out to 1,000 yards there, so that's pretty good. What is one thing or two that you wish, or items that you had that has made a difference, a great improvement in your scores? Shot timer. Shot timer was a game changer for me. Takes all the time management, takes all that mental energy of trying to figure out how much time you have left off the table. You have a shot timer that tells you got 1 minute left, and then every 10 seconds after that. I think MDT's shot timer that they came out with was like $200. Like, get the hell out of here. I don't care if it's fully programmable. The shot timer that I did a review on is like the Spur Scientific talking lab timer, right? There's a video on my channel all about it. If you use my Amazon link, I get like a couple cents back, right? It doesn't cost you any more. It's like between $25 and $30. And you're going to charge $200 or $300 for a timer? Like, MDT, what is wrong with you? Absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, timer, number one. Probably the best investment I made, and like best bang for buck for sure. $30 for a timer that tells you exactly how much time you have left on a stage. Invaluable. Based on your own experience, what has allowed you to make the biggest improvement in your competitive shooting journey? That's going to be my mental game. So I don't know if you guys have been here for a while. A little bit of a story time. My first match win came basically like a week after I was laid off. So think about that, right? So I had a job. I was laid off and around the layoffs. Basically I was like obviously very upset because it came as kind of a surprise. And yeah. And I was like, you know what? This is good. I have some time off. I can choose where I go next in life. And just having that like burden of like the very stressful work environment and like, my work life, like kind of like moved aside. It came with its own challenges, don't get me wrong. Finding a new job and all that kind of stuff. But got laid off. 10 days later, I win my first match. I win my first match by cleaning the entire match. So that just proved to me like there was other things going on in my life. I was stressed. I wasn't like focused, and now I was like, oh, I don't have anything going on. I'm going to focus on this match and I'm going to do well. And mental game is huge. And then once you win your first match, you can do it. Once you clean your first stage, you can clean a stage. And then every time after that becomes easier and easier. You're like, I've done this before. I can do it. I know I can do it. Just knowing you can do something, it's this weird psychological thing that goes on. And it was like there's a really good example, right? It's well known in like psychology. It was like the 4-minute mile barrier for running. Everyone thought it was impossible. And then once it was broken, all of a sudden you have like 10 runners the next year break the 4-minute mile or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but it's the idea that like you think it's impossible until something happens where it is possible. And then when you know it's possible, all of a sudden it's like, wow, everyone else can do it, So once you can clean a stage, once you can, win a match, once you can clean a match, it's doable. So mental game, number one. Love the live stream and videos. Helps me a lot during matches. Thank you, Bill. Herman says, appreciate how unselfish you've been in sharing all your info on matches, positions, thought process, equipment. That's very helpful. And removing the anxiety for those on the fence about competing. Just do it. It's going to be nerve-wracking. I actually took a coworker to his first match this past Sunday. And he was like nervous because he's like, I want to be good and I want to do well and I'm a competitive guy. And it's like, this is unlike probably anything you've done before. There's a huge learning curve, but once you know what you need to work on, it becomes like relatively straightforward. But like in any shooting sport, any competition that's like this, like it's not an innate ability that anyone has. No one is born knowing how to shoot a rifle well. Like um, it's not a natural thing. So it's a learned skill for every single person. So if you know that going into it, it's like you're there to learn, you're there to have fun, and you'll get better with time and practice and practice, practice, practice. All right, let's see. Last bit of general questions. I think this is it. Setting up practice course with your thoughts on bag setup and approach ideas. Practice what you need to improve on. If you don't like the tank trap, either build yourself a tank trap or find something that is in the same sort of level as a tank trap, and put a 1-inch pasty on the wall and basically say, all right, I'm going to design my own course of fire because this is what I'm not good at, and do that. Fast target acquisition, dry fire practice. Practice a little bit of what you're really good at and a lot of bit of what you're not good at, and that's going to pay dividends. So you can't forget the stuff that you're good at because you still need to know that, but you know what I mean. Practice what you need to practice. Other than the usual rifle bipod bag, ballistic solver, what do you think is the most helpful, important accessory? Again, that talking timer, that just time management. Again, takes the mental focus off of worrying about how much time is left, and easily the biggest bang for the buck. Thank you for the birthday wishes, everybody. What do you consider the essential gear for this discipline, and specific equipment do you recommend for someone just getting started in 22? What rifle do you recommend that is above base class but not exorbitantly expensive and capable of holding it? Okay, so the second part of this question, I totally understand if you don't want to go into a base class rifle because you're really kind of like limiting yourself to 4 or 5 rifles that really fit that bill. So if you want something that's like not super expensive, look at the higher end CZs, some of the CZ MTRs, and then look at the Bergara B14R. I think those are probably like the good mid-level ones. And the benefit of the Bergara B14R is it's a Remington 700 platform. So you can use Remington 700 triggers, and you can change their stock into like a chassis. And then if you go to a Voodoo down the line, which is also Remington 700 footprint, you can just take the barreled action out, put the Voodoo in. So you're not those pieces of the puzzle, because they're all Remington 700 platform, move with you as you advance in the sport if you want to go that way. So that would be my argument for the Bergara over the CZ. I'm a CZ fanboy, so I really like the CZ. And the last question, I am wondering if it's possible to compete with only a rear bag and a medium front bag and still be competitive. Absolutely. If you practice with those gear, you don't have to have a bipod. So if you want a 2-bag solution for like the prone stages, I've seen people do that, like a backpack up front and a rear bag, lay down on the backpack, just like they do in sniper school, supposedly. And yeah, they people do well. So as long as you practice that way. So that was all 57 questions and then some. So I hope I answered your question. Some of them, like I said, will need dedicated videos. But now for the main attraction, I think everyone is here for who is going to win. So I'm going to show you how we're going to make this as fair as possible. So here is a Excel sheet. And I have this random function here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first change all these random values. So we're going to get like a double random. So we're going to copy this. We're going to paste values. And then we're going to sort by smallest to largest. So basically, we've just randomized the list of people. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to this random number generator. And as you can tell, the first one is at 2 and the last one is at 58. So we're going to pick a random number between 2 and 58. And let's see. Okay, random number generator. Here we go. 2. Whoever this lands on, between 2 and 58, whoever this lands on this randomized list of questions that I compiled, will win the bipod. And here we go. Number 36. So number 36, we're going to scroll down here. 36 is Alan M. from North Carolina. I'll be reaching out to you. Alan M.'s question was about ammo. It says his was the lot testing question, of elaboration on what you use for day-to-day shooting and that kind of stuff. So good question. Was answered during the video, but it's going to be row 36. Alan M., congratulations. Let me just highlight your name here. Congratulations to Alan M. on winning the bipod, and thanks everyone for attending. And if there's any last minute questions in the comments, otherwise we'll wrap it up. I know we've been going for a while, but had fun hanging out with all you guys. Really appreciate the support. Lots more videos are going to come soon. And yeah, so if there's any last minute questions, get them in now. Otherwise we will end the stream. And I'll give it about a minute more. And I'll be reaching out to Alan M. for his shipping info. And there'll be more giveaways in the future, by the way. I'll be giving away a Coltac bag and their backbone system. So that will be in the future. I don't know when that will be, but make sure you're subscribed. You have notifications enabled. Go down here, like the videos, all that good stuff. Time to get ready for a center fire match. Have a fun birthday. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap it here. Pretty long stream, but hopefully got to your questions. If not, leave them down in the comments below, and I will get to them eventually. And thanks to everyone for being here. And yeah, this community means a lot. Andy Bob says, great video. Good luck in UMA. Thank you. That's going to be an interesting one. Trying out for the U.S. national team. We'll see what happens. But yeah, appreciate everything. And yeah, building a really good community here. Glad you guys like the content. Always up for comments and critiques. So let me know. I want to make this better for you guys. I have a lot of fun doing it. It's a lot of work to edit videos, but it's a lot of fun. And I learn a lot from you guys as well. So with that being said, we are going to end the stream. Herman says like before leaving. Thank you. Yeah, and this will be up on the channel. So if you missed something earlier in the day, you can go back and skip around to the questions that we answered before. All right, guys. With that, we're gonna stop here, and yeah, thanks a lot. Until I see you next time. As always, score more points.